Welcome to Pathways to Success, where we aim to build and encourage diversity among health professionals. Through casual conversations with trainees and professionals, our goal is to support the social and emotional well-being of aspiring doctors of color. Here, you can get tips on writing personal statements, interviewing, networking, school selections, and much more. Join us as we inspire and nurture the next generation of Black doctors. Welcome back, everyone, to our Austin Black Physicians Association's Pathways to Success. This is basically where we support the social and emotional development of our future Black doctors. And I'm always excited to do this podcast with my guests. First of all, I am Dr. Chinwe Ifuribe, and then I have with me, as usual, my host.
Hey, you guys, my name is Grace, and I am a third-year pharmacy student.
Awesome. Grace, who do we have with us today? You know how we love having guests on our pod/video cast. Today, we're talking about making the choice. We've talked about different points on that path to becoming a physician. And today we're talking about, like, once you kind of get through all those hurdles, sitting there and saying, okay, where do I go to get this training? But we have some lovely people joining us today for this conversation. And you are going to be directing this. I love when I'm able to be behind the scenes and I have my young people lead. So go ahead.
Thank you for such a warm welcome in. We have two wonderful and great future doctors with us today. We have Rachel and Arinze, who will be sharing their experiences, their journeys, and their story with us today. We'll start with Rachel. Can you tell us, I've said your name, but who are you? What school do you go to? What year are you in? And whatever you want to let us know before we begin.
Okay, well, my name is Rachel Obima. I am a fourth-year medical student at McGovern Medical School at the UT Health in Houston, and I'm currently applying to residency, and so I'm going for internal medicine.
Awesome.
Ooh,
welcome, Rachel.
And Arinze, likewise, who you are, where you go to school, and anything else you would like to share with us.
Hello. I'm Arinze Wabata. And I'm a second-year student at Harvard Medical School. I did my undergraduate at the University of Texas at Austin, and I'm very excited to be here because I got the scholarship to study for the MCAT from the Austin Black Physicians Association, and I guess that turned out pretty well. That's why I'm here today, so I'm very glad to be here. Yeah.
And we're so glad to have you as well, too. Oh, aren't we, Grace? Oh, my goodness. Yes, he's talking about the Dr. Timothy George scholarship that we offer. It is an MCAT prep scholarship. Right now, if you check on our website, you'll see that it is open for application. So if you have anyone who's interested in becoming a physician who is a student of color, please let us know and apply. But at least Arinze will be able to give us some insight into how that helped him on his journey. So thank you so much for joining us.
Yeah, thank you.
Definitely. Now that we have our introductions here, today we're talking about making the choice. So we'll be guided towards like all things that we want young people to know as they prepare to, possibly choose which health professional school they want to attend. So before we get into that, Rachel and Arinze, you guys both went to school at the University of Texas for undergrad. So thinking back to undergrad, blink your eyes, it was yesterday. Do you recall any resources or tools that significantly guided you to getting to medical school today? We'll start with Rachel.
Oh, yes. Definitely. The most important resource that I was privileged to have was that I was a part of the JAMP program, or it's called the Joint Admission Medical Program, which is just a great program that offers like financial assistance to students, but also support to get into medical school. And at the end of the journey for JAMP, you sort of get matched to a medical school. And so people see the program as sort of like, once you're in, you're kind of going to be a doctor. Throughout, there's different requirements that you have to meet to make it to the end, but it's kind of like, was like a safety net in medical school, well, in undergraduate, because once I was in, I had a lot of support, I got a lot of mentors, I got a lot of advice on like my application process. I got to interview essentially at all the medical schools participating in the JAMP program in Texas. And then at the end, I was matched to a medical school at McGovern. So that was by far the most important resource that I was able to have.
Thank you. For all y'all who don't know what JAMP is, now's the time to look it up to see if you can receive those wonderful resources as well. I remember when I was an undergrad, I was like, oh my gosh, JAMP is so cool, I want it. And I was like, wait, I'm pharmacy, can't get it. But, you know, I'm thankful still for the resources and opportunities that were presented to me. But same question for you, Renze. Was there any specific tool or resources that helped you get to where you are on your journey in medicine?
So you may not believe it, but I talk too much, so I'll try to keep this pretty short. But I think at UT Austin, the most significant thing for me was having mentorship in students that are like older than me. I feel like when I started my education at UT, I started in the TIP program. And the course assistants, the older students that were in the program helped me a lot in terms of like guiding me to programs that I should apply to, or organizations on campus that I should apply to that will provide like the best support for me. Because, you know, there's a lot of organizations out there at UT. You don't know what is what, you don't know what's going to help you and what will not. Yeah. But I think my mentor back then at UT in the TIP program told me to apply to the Summer Health Professionals Education Program, SHPEP. And I think that's actually where I met Grace. We were from UT, but we had seen each other before, but that was actually the first time we got to like spend time together and hang out. So, but that program really did a lot for me because it put me in the mindset, it put me in that situation where I could be like, yo, I can do this. Because I remember before I even went to that program, I remember with my best friend Charles back then, we went to a Black Health Professionals Organization meeting. And after the meeting, we found out like how hard it is to apply to med school. And we came out of the meeting like so frazzled. And I turned to him and I was like, bro, if you don't quit, I'm not gonna quit. And he said to me, if you don't quit, I'm not gonna quit. So that was very crazy. And like that's like that sense of like being afraid at that time, at that point in time, and going to this program and learning all this stuff about medicine and how I had a clear path to be able to get there, made everything like seem so like there was less weight put on me because during the program, we did like mock interviews. We had to write personal statement. We had to update our resumes and everything before applying to the program. So it felt as if like I had done a little bit of the work in getting into med school. And I've been in that mindset of, okay, this is what is going to happen in the future. This is what I have to work towards for the next few years. And coming back from that program, I also applied to the Health Careers Mentorship Program at the University of Texas. It's a big program that allows you to shadow different doctors. I shadowed about 22 different doctors in about 10 to 15 different specialties. So when you're applying to medical school, the application, they want to make sure that you know what you're doing. They want to make sure that you won't get into medical school them, right? And the only way they can know this is that you've shadowed a lot of different, not a lot, but like you've done some like shadowing in the hospital and you know that for sure, this is what you want to do. They don't want you to like get to the hospital and then see blood or like see something and then run away because you had this before. Yeah, so that's what the shadowing is. And this organization provided all this for me. And it's just like, it was great because it also had other things that came with it besides shadowing. But I think that's also another thing I wanted to highlight. So if you're still a student at UT, you should consider applying to that program as well.
Definitely, thank you.
And I just want to add to that. What summer program did you do at? Where did you go for SHPEP?
Oh yeah, I forgot to mention that I went to University of Florida. We both did. So SHPEP has actually is becoming more competitive year by year because everybody is realizing how helpful this program is.
Right. Yeah.
But back then, like I applied, like you only get to apply to 3 schools, and I did not get accepted in the other 2 schools I applied to. I only got accepted to University of Florida, and afterwards I know people that even applied to other schools. They don't get into any of the 3. But I know also Charles applied to McGovern, which is where you go to school.
Yeah, he was there. I remember.
Yes.
So like just I second everything you're saying for sure. Like having peer mentorship is so important for so many different reasons. Like having someone in the journey ahead of you to tell you like what classes to take, who to meet, or what programs to join. Like SHPEP is so important. Even though I had JAMP, I didn't have JAMP like all throughout like undergrad. I remember I applied to JAMP, I didn't get in, I was waitlisted. I thought the world was over. I thought I wasn't gonna get into medical school anymore, blah, 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 blah. But I had a mentor who had just got into medical school and he was like, you need to just relax. Not everyone needs JAMP to get in. There's so many different journeys. And that's when he told me, SHPEP at the time was called SMDEP. And so he was like, there's SMDEP, you should apply to it. You don't need JAMP to, you know, to go to medical schools over the summer and do all these different things. And so because of that peer mentorship, I learned about SMDEP and I ended up doing SMDEP at Howard University. And all the things you're saying, how it's so helpful is so true. Like I met so many people that are now my colleagues who are now also in medical school or pharmacy school. I've met a lot of mentors that are doctors and I've did a lot of shadowing and it's just very helpful. And I eventually got into JAMP, I got off the wait list and all that, but having that peer mentorship or just like people to encourage you to keep going and open your eyes to other journeys to get to the same place is very important.
And what you and so what I'm hearing from you all is one, seek out programs. Even for anyone listening who's not at University of Texas in Austin, your institution somewhere has programs that are catered to being able to help folks on, you know, get on a certain path. There are some paths for engineering, but there's definitely paths for medicine if you're interested in that field. So seek those out. The second is find accountability and buddy partners of some sort. Arinze said that him and his friend left a meeting frazzled, but then somehow they stuck it out and said, if you don't quit, I won't quit. And that's part of why we wanted to start this webinar, is to really talk about the importance and the key part of community. You have to have your village around you. Because medicine is not easy, and there are going to be so many different points on that path that will overwhelm you. Like that's just one BHPO meeting. Can you imagine going into like residency and on call and you PICU rotation, or I say PICU, pediatric ICU, but ICU rotations. There's so many different points on this journey that may cause you to feel that you're losing your foundation. But it's really, really important to find your connection, find what grounds you, find the people that ground you so that you don't lose sight of your focus. And even with Rachel, having that mentor that was able to give her some hope to find a different path. And again, she was still able to get into the program that she was looking for. So just wanted to touch on that because yes, we're all about social and emotional wellness and development. But Grace, thank you very much.
No, I love it. Candid conversations. We appreciate it. Diving a little deeper into medical school in regards to like picking a medical school. When applying to medical school for you, Arinze, how many schools did you apply to? But also for you, Rachel, let's keep that question. How many schools did you apply to? We'll start with Arinze this time and bounce back to Rachel.
So I think the thing with applying to med school, there's always like this fear that you might not be applying to enough, or that you might not be, that you might not get interviews to the field that you might end up applying to. So yeah, I was also like affected by that. Everybody was like, damn, it's so hard to get into anywhere. So you gotta apply to 50 schools, you gotta apply to like 30 schools or something. But yeah, I kind of found like a balance there because I was actually working a lot at that time to be able to also like afford like all the applications and stuff. And I had interest in applying to out-of-state schools, and out-of-state schools cost a lot, like outside of Texas. Most of them like had application fees of like $100 each for one school, but you don't see that a lot in Texas. In Texas, it's mostly around like $60 or even no fee at all. So you have to consider all these things. I think I applied to about 24 schools in total. And I think about 12 of them were Texas schools. So every other thing was out of state. So yeah, that's one thing you have to have in mind, the cost and how to remedy that with the number of schools you want to apply to.
Definitely. All right, you, Rachel?
Yeah, so I applied to 9 schools because the JAMP program, they have you apply to every school in Texas. And at the time, there was 9 schools, I believe, or I think Dell just became a medical school, so they weren't a part of JAMP yet, but I applied to all 9 at the time. I think Texas has like 15 or 16 now.
Uh,
But yeah, I'm in JAMP, so the goal was to stay in Texas, and the general idea is apply to all the Texas schools through JAMP-SAS. Yeah.
Ooh. Okay, so even for you, Rachel, even with JAMP, so you couldn't apply outside at all? Was that a stipulation of the program?
Yes, you cannot apply outside because JAMP is like a government funded federal legislature type of
Gotcha.
program. And so once you're a part of it, they've invested a lot of money into you to become like a Texas doctor. That was one of the missions of the program.
Okay.
But I sort of look at that as more, am I choosing to be in a Texas medical school at the time of accepting my JAMP sort of contract? Because some people have to wait, they wait until, the end of junior year or the end of senior year to decide, do you want to stay in Texas or do you want to leave? But me joining JAMP at my sophomore, or joining JAMP when I got accepted after the wait list, was pretty much agreeing that, yeah, I want to be at a Texas school.
Gotcha. Okay, thank you. Okay, now with applications for all the medical schools, there are interviews, of course, we know this. So when it came down to interviewing for different programs, how did you prioritize like what institution you wanted to accept the interview from, or what institution after interviewing, like this is at the top of my list, this is at the bottom of my list? We'll start with Rachel, then go back to Renee.
Okay, so being in JAMP, we sort of interviewed everywhere. We had to interview everywhere, but that was a great opportunity to kind of see the different flavors of different schools. And whenever you're choosing your medical school, you sort of have to know what's important to you and then make a mental list or a literal list, like on Google Sheets, of the things that are important to you. Like, what's the curriculum like? What's the class size? What are there different ways to support students? Where is it located? Are the students diverse? Is patient population diverse? There's all these different things that you sort of have to think about that you probably didn't know you had to think about. That would be important to you, and then determining what each school has and seeing if it's a good fit for you based on those things, I guess. For me personally, it wasn't that hard to determine what's important to me. I wanted to be in a school that was diverse, or as diverse as they come in the United States. I also wanted to be at a school where the students were sort of had a mindset of camaraderie, or the vibe was very, not necessarily like chill where they don't get anything done, but more like we're helping each other versus you doing your own thing and fending for your own. Also wanted to be at a school where even if the class size was big, there was things set in place to make you feel like you were in a small class. Like McGovern has different things called like McGovern societies, or different groups, or like peers, social groups, where you meet and talk and support each other socially, not just academically. So I wanted a school that had those types of things. And then other stuff like curriculum. I wanted a program that had integrated curriculum, where it was like the new innovative way to learn in medical school, stuff like that.
That's cool.
I'm even learning from you. Go ahead, Dr.
Before you move, even the idea of choosing Texas, do you have family in Texas? Like, what got you to?
That's a great.
Because I was gonna say, let's
good one. That's a
take
great
a
question. Let's take a step way back. So the location, very, very important for me, because I'm born in Houston. I went to school in I like everything about me is like Houston, Texas. I have a lot of pride in Texas and a lot of pride in Houston. And so when looking at where I wanted to be, it was definitely easier to look more towards Houston schools because my family's here. And, medical school is, hard. And I went in thinking I would want to be able to go home and eat my mom's cooking on the weekend if I needed that support. And so the draw is very like comfortable place where I'm familiar with, where there's friends and family all around. And so that was like number one, of course.
Good to know.
Thanks for reminding me that.
That's all right. Because it's important, isn't it? Like when we think about like where we're going to be and you're going to spend 4 years of your life. And there are some people that need to make that hard choice to go somewhere where they don't know anyone. Mm-hmm. And that's when we kind of encourage people to find, again, what in that area can remind you of home? You know, is there a faith-based location that you can, you know, connect yourself with, or something? So it's not to say, especially if you can't be at home to study for medicine, when you're looking at other locations, try to find places that you'll be able to see yourself outside of the classes, outside of the rigor of medicine or your coursework, to be able to unwind and rejuvenate your mind. Okay, I just wanted to throw that out there. But Arinze, you might be able to share some of that with us. I mean, unless you have family in Boston, because then that'll throw that theory out the water. So
yeah, I do not have any family in Boston, but I will talk about that more. But I guess when Grace asked that question, I found it a little funny because I feel like when you apply to med school, there is this like tension of like waiting for schools to send you an interview. So for the first few interviews you get, there's no question of whether you want to accept or decline this interview. You don't know if there's another one coming. So,
beggars can be choosers.
Yeah. So the first few interviews, you get definitely like accept those interviews and see like what that leads to. Even if it doesn't, even if those schools are not the schools that you want to go to, it's still like good practice to like go to those schools, interview, and you don't even know what's going to happen. They might end up blowing your mind, and you might end up going to those schools. There are schools that I went to for interviews, even schools that I like nobody thought like that they could see themselves there. I was like, oh my God, I love this school, and everybody is looking at me like, are you okay? And the schools that everyone expected me to like, I did not like them as much as the other ones. And like these are schools that are popular and everything. And it's just like that. But the time I would recommend to like start making that choice of like there's a difference between choosing where you would interview and where you would go to school. Because towards the end of the application cycle, where you've done a lot of interviews, or you've done like interviews in the schools that you are most interested in, then that's where I would be like, okay, now start thinking about, do I have money to travel to go to this interview? Do I really want to like spend my time out of class to go to this interview? So that's what you start considering, because towards the end, I got invited to a school. I had to like fly to go to the interview. I was like, no, I had already like done all this interview in the schools that I think I'll be better at. And I think that even if all the worst things happen, like I know at least I'll go somewhere in any of these, and I would rather go to those places than these other schools. So that's how I make all this decision. But then you have to also like think about like the I guess like interviews can be a lot. So like it weighs on you emotionally too. Like at a point, it becomes like easier to go through it. At some point, like different schools have different formats. So there are other things that you might not want to go through, like the stress of like doing an MMI, or even schools that have like way longer stuff than MMI. So you have to consider all these things.
What's an MMI for those of us who?
Oh yeah, MMI is like it's like multiple mini interviews. So rather than having a conversation with someone, you like keep knocking on different doors. About some schools have up to 10, some schools have around like 6. You go into the room, interview with one person, leave, go to another room, interview with another person. So there are different things, but like
there are different like scenarios too. Like they give you ethical scenarios that you read and you think about, and then you go in and you pretty much answer. So it's a little stressful in my opinion.
So these are things you all consider, but like I would say at the beginning, you don't worry about that. Like go and deal with the stress, I guess, to make sure, okay, at least I know that I've like cast my net somewhere before, unless you're the person that's like, I would have thought that if you chose all these schools to apply to, then at least you want to go, you have some degree of like interest to go to these schools to interview with them to find out more. So if there's a school you would not go to an interview if you had not already gone to the other schools, then I wouldn't have recommended like applying to the school in the first place. Like if that was the first school you got an interview to, and you're like, no, I'm not gonna go, then it's the same thing as like not applying to the school at all. So I would say like when you only have to make that choice should be like towards the end of the interviewing cycle, when you're like, okay, I've interviewed at all these places, I feel comfortable with these places. Now let me not interview at these places anymore. So that's one thing. And then another thing is like, yeah, you have to consider the cost of getting to the interview. I think these days, most interviews this cycle and the past cycle were online, but I'm sure that's not going to be the case for the future, because COVID is disappearing and will disappear in Jesus' name. So, but that's one thing. That's big. But yeah, in terms of like location, I know like with interviewing also, if you're interviewing out of states, you have to think about, it's not just about flying there. You have to stay at a hotel, or you could stay with students in the school. Like there's a lot of spending that goes into it. So with HCMP2, we had friends or like past members in different schools that you could stay with. So if you have family members you could stay with at different places, that helps you with the cost and all. And also like you will also think about, if I get into this school, is there like, am I at a chance of like getting financial aid and stuff like that? Those things will also like help you in making your decision whether to go to the school, to spend money, to go to the school to interview or not. But I say, if you have the money, really do it. Like it's better to have like different options and be overwhelmed than not have an option at all. That's what I would say. Yeah.
Wow, oh yes, you gave us all the tools, but I definitely agree. Even me and pharmacy, I was definitely along the mindset of casting your net wide. Sometimes you never know. But also weighing the options. Where do you see yourself physically? Like I stayed in Texas too, family is here, but also support. You guys hit it all. I can't even add nothing else. But my next question for you guys is, if you have to say ultimately, like what advice would you give a student that's about to go into this next cycle? Well, that is in this next cycle. They've applied to all their medical schools, they're getting their interviews in, they've interviewed at all the places. Now, how do they make that one choice? This is where I'm going. If it was one factor you had to choose. We'll start with Rachel.
Okay. I would say there's a couple of things I would offer advice for. If you're having multiple interviews and you didn't just have one interview. If you have one interview, then that's where you're going to go. And that's great as well, because you're still going to get into medical school. But if you have the privilege of having gone multiple interviews or having multiple interview invites and you're considering different schools, I would say that the number one thing or the top things to think about is, how did you feel at the interview? Like, does it feel right? Because on interview day, the schools are on their best behavior. They're trying to convince you that it's like the best school ever and you will not regret this decision. So they have their best students, the most enthusiastic students of the school. They show you all the cool tour spots around the school and the city, I guess, or like the hospital. They show you like they tell you all the most interesting facts. They show you their student lounge, and they tell you about all the different things their students do. And if they give you all of that, the cream of the crop, and you're just like, meh, then that's probably, you should take that into like heavy consideration, because that's the best it's probably going to be. A lot of times when I was doing different interviews, I could tell that if I were the student, doing the tour or doing like the panel, and I was having that vibe, I would feel sad, like I wouldn't want to be in their shoes. And so if you get this gut feeling that it's just not for you, then you should really listen to it, because they're essentially giving you the best that they can give you, or the best that they want to give you or can give you. And if it's not living up to your standards, then it's a big issue. So just kind of feel it out and see what their best looks like to you. Another thing I would say is to talk to the students that are currently at the schools you're looking for, not just the students you meet on interview day, because like I said, they're going to be the most enthusiastic about your school. If you have friends at different programs, or people that know people at different programs, get contact with them and ask them, like the easy questions at first, like what are the things you love the most about the school? Pay attention to the things that people highlight and make sure that those things that they highlight are sort of things that you care about. And then ask them the heavy questions, like what are things that they wish they could change? What are some challenges they faced? What were the different supports that they got throughout those challenges? And ask them, you know, like if they could make the decision again, would they go to that school? And so definitely talk to people that are still there. I feel it's most important to talk to the first years and the second years, especially because they're the ones who are they're immediately right before you. I could give advice about McGovern Medical School, but a lot of the first years and second years are experiencing the school differently than me because there's always change to curriculum, change to the vibe. And so try to find people who are like more recent in the medical school. And then another final advice I would say is just kind of be real with yourself. Just be honest. If you do have the privilege of choosing between different schools, think hard about what you want. And I wanted to be in a school where there was enough Black people to make a group of friends. Like the group me wasn't going to just be a text message between one person. I wanted to be in a school where the patients were also Black. I wanted to be in a school where the faculty were also Black. Not everybody has to be Black, of course, but just having a diverse feeling around, and that's important to me. And if it's not important to you, then that's okay. Just be real about what you think is important and choose a school that fits that the best that it can.
Yes, yes, and yes. Oh, just bringing back memories. This is why she's a great mentor. She just has that passion for me.
Oh gosh.
Arinze, what about you? What would you say to students that are almost there, reaching the finish line of the beginning, What would you say, Arinze?
Yeah, I totally agree with Rachel. That was awesome. Thank you. Just to point out a few different things. I feel like people tell you when you go to the interview, the school is selling themselves to you and all that stuff, and there are people around to talk to them. I don't know what other people's experiences are, but most times, like when I went to interviews, like I was just trying to do my interview and get out of there. Like all the things they were telling me, like a lot of them did not go in. Like I think, like one thing that you would do to help with that is to like have like a note where you write things down. A lot of people had suggested this. A lot of people did this. You write down like the things that you liked about that school. So I did this a little bit. I had an Excel sheet where I wrote down like, because this is the same Excel sheet that I had like for the names of the schools, the date of my interview. So I make sure I don't miss anything, the date of the interview, the date I received the interview. Then when after the interview, I write down like things that were mentioned during the interview that like, it was not a lot because I did not pay a lot of attention. It was just like the main things I liked about this school. And then after you get accepted, that's when it's like, okay, now I have to pay more attention. I have to like pay attention to see what's going on. Now it's easier because there's less schools too. And something you have to think about is that you have resources. You have students in these schools that are excited to talk to you. So don't just go struggle on your own, trying to do research and everything online. A lot of these students, they tell you the truth. Like if you come to me, I will complain to you about what my school is doing wrong. I don't even care. Nobody will beat me. So a lot of these schools are a lot of the students are pretty excited to tell you the truth. Like nobody, like I don't think people will intentionally like just lie to you or anything to get you to get into the school or anything. So after you get into the school, a lot of schools, mostly out of state schools, they do second looks where you come back to the school after you've been accepted to see what's going on in the school and see if you'd want to go there. So these are opportunities to like reach out to people in the school. A lot of schools also like email you and ask you, hey, do you want to speak to students or anything like that? Even if nobody emailed you, go to LinkedIn, find somebody that goes to that school, reach out to them. If they don't, like I have a friend that emailed someone that he messaged 50 people that went to one school on LinkedIn thinking that nobody would reply him, and all 50 of them replied him. So he was like, oh my God, I'm sorry. I no longer want to talk to you. So that's what, so don't think that students like to talk. So message them, they would reply. Message them, even if they're busy, they'll connect you to someone that can help you really fast. So do that to get more information about the school. And I would say like another thing, like I'm a very simple person. I like to think, but like I know people have like a long list of like things that they want in a school. Like I would say I keep it simple. I'm like, okay, these are the 5 main things. I believe that human beings like adapt. Like no matter where you go, you get a good medical education and you do pretty well. So like all these medical schools, there's like accreditation that they go through to make sure that you leave the school like knowing what you need to know. So like I had like 5 different things on my list. These are the main things that I'm looking for in the school I'm going to choose. So I don't like have a very long list that I want to make sure that this school checks out all of this. So if these 5 things work out for me in these schools, okay, these are the schools that I have to think about, because at a point all these schools like starts merging together, becoming one thing, one blurry thing. You'll be like, okay, I want to go to like student clinic. The first school will be like, oh, we have student clinic. The second school, oh, we have student clinic. The third, all of them will have student clinic. So that's the thing. Like a lot of them have similar things, because even things that are not in that school that you want to go to, you can go to that school and start that stuff when you get. So don't think that there are limitations. Don't think that there are like it's a life, right? Like if you people talk about soulmates, you have like this perfect picture in your mind, but when you see someone, you make adjustments, right? But that's a different topic for another day. But yeah, so that's the same thing for med school. Like there are things adjust. So choose those main things that you would want in a school, and if you meet the schools that satisfy those things, then okay, you've narrowed it down. Then you talk to more people and find things out. But for me, also, Rachel mentioned this about like the people that go to the school, people you want to meet at the school. When I got accepted to like different out-of-state schools and also schools in Texas, like a lot of the schools, they're gonna build like group meets or like Slack or whatever for students. And in some schools, you're gonna see what's going on there. You're gonna be like, oh my God, I don't want to talk to these people. But then there are other schools where, like, for example, at HMS, we had like the older Black students create a group meet with the new Black students. And these people were like helping us. Like I even knew everybody, got acquainted to everybody within like about a week or two. And even to make people that made the decision to like leave and go to another place, it made everybody sad because everybody had already known each other even before school started. So yeah, I talk too much, but all these schools, like you have that connection. Just believe it. You have that connection. You will see when it comes. And yeah, don't make it too complicated more than it should be. But I wish you the best. You'll do great.
Thank you. No, you wow. Can I just take you guys with me and encourage me on my journey? I'm not finished yet. I need encouragement. But off to you, Dr. Chinwe.
This has been so, I think you have another profession lined up somewhere. I mean, if you ever get tired of medicine. But this has been so great. We've talked about just the whole idea of the journey, right? It's, finding programs that will give you that foundation and exposure. The key thing is exposure. Finding accountability and community to be able to stay encouraged along the process. We've talked about thinking through the decision, right? For those who have an option, for those who have more options, there is no one size fits all. It's a matter of what works best for you, what you're looking for, what allows you to thrive. Because what thrives for one person doesn't necessarily allow the other person to thrive. So find what helps you thrive and keep that in the forefront as you're making a decision. But thank you all so much for your insights. It has been such a pleasure having you, Rachel and Arinze, future doctors. We can't wait for you to join the ranks, honestly. And Grace, thank you so much for moderating. And for those of you who are listening, thank you so much for spending time with us. We went a little over, but hey, we were having fun.
I'm sorry.
Conversation. But it just goes to show, like, just having this connection, I mean, it makes the journey all the better. So if you have any thoughts, any questions out there for us that you'd like us to address on our Pathways to Success, please reach out to us, info@austinbpa.com. Again, it's info@austinbpa.com. bpa.com. If you'd like to sponsor one of our aspiring docs, you guys have already heard it. There's so many costs at different points, whether it's interviewing, flights, accommodations, just even the applications themselves. There are a lot of things that Austin Black Physicians Association is trying to do to support the next generation of Black doctors. And, you even heard some of our guests here talk about working in order to make ends meet. So just know that we would love to partner with you. If you're interested in sponsoring, we'd love to partner with you, reach out to us. We have these programs that we're developing, and it's just for our future. But thank you all for your time. This is great for the soul, and we wish you all the best.
Thank you. Happy to be here. Happy to help.
Yeah.